Russian forces crossed the Dnieper today and are advancing toward Kherson. Putin is going all in. Good afternoon, dear friends. You are on the channel Ruslan Belov. We continue to explore the developments on the front lines with you daily. Before we begin, I ask you to subscribe to the channel and like the video so that more people can learn the truth. You know what I think? Zelensky should be awarded the Nobel Prize in mathematics. I'm serious. Yesterday, he once again spoke about losses and said that Ukraine has lost 45,000 people in 3 years of war, while Russia has lost 300 to 350,000 people. At the same time, according to Zelensky himself, the Ukrainian army consists of 1 million people. Well, you probably know that a million-strong army, with losses of 45,000, continues to mobilize several 100,000 people every year, constantly lowers the age of those being mobilized, and still faces a shortage of personnel on the front lines. It all seems logical and adds up, right? Well, in Zelensky's head at least. Meanwhile, we continue to analyze the situation on the front lines. Let's open the map. Today we have some very interesting news. First, we'll discuss the situation in the Donetsk region, and in the second part of the episode, we'll move to the south. Straight to the south. To the Kherson region. Something interesting is brewing there, I must say. But let's take things in order. So what's happening? Let's start with this area, because the Ukrainian armed forces are currently facing significant problems here. Even Ukrainian telegram channels are openly writing about it. First, the long-suffering Dnieper. Why do I call it long-suffering? Because only about 10% of the Ukrainian armed forces garrison remains here. I mean those who are still on their feet. They have many wounded and many killed, and all requests for the evacuation of the 300s killed soldiers are being ignored by the command. No orders to retreat have been given, even though, as you can see on the map, the northern, eastern and southern parts of the village are under Russian control. A few days ago, the fighting moved to the center. But even in the center, the weakened Ukrainian garrison, depleted by losses, couldn't hold back the onslaught. As a result, they retreated to the western outskirts of the village. How long will they hold out here? Clearly not for long. A Ukrainian soldier, Muzhny, on his Telegram channel, is asking why they are even being forced to hold this position when it's obvious how it will all end. That is, the village will clearly come under Russian control. So why not order the remaining 10% of the Ukrainian garrison to retreat to, say, Uklani? I think you know the answers to these questions. If you order a retreat, it will be seen as a betrayal. But this way, they can keep talking about a heroic defense for a couple more days. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian armed forces' defense is crumbling not only in Dnieper, but also in Konstantinovka and Andriivka. The map here isn't updated, but the fighting is now taking place near the Suki Yali River Gully. Here, on the approaches to the southeastern part of the village, there is a Ukrainian stronghold here, and if they are pushed out, the troops will be able to move in and secure the southern part of Konstantinovka. Things are even worse in Andriivka. Pressure on the village is coming from two sides, from the north and the east. Moreover, the northern Russian forces are advancing parallel to the village. It's clear why they're doing this, to reach the western outskirts and first, block the retreat routes and second, outflank the garrison. This will leave them pinned against the river. Further, no significant changes have been recorded here. The fighting for the village of Zaporizhzhia continues. As I mentioned earlier, the Ukrainian forces here are on the brink. So here we are, looking at the fields of the Dnieper-Petrovsk region, open fields all the way to Novopavlivka. No trenches, no fortifications, no strongholds, no bunkers, nothing. And the Russian forces are now fighting for this village. It won't be long before they reach Orakov, and once it comes under Russian control, the path to Novopavlivka will be wide open. Overall, things are quite grim. Now let's move on to a very interesting section of the front. Interesting because we rarely hear any news from there, and it's clear why. Essentially, the status quo has been maintained here for the past 2 years. I'm talking, of course, about the Kherson region. Here, the natural barrier of the Dnieper River has divided the Russian forces and the Ukrainian armed forces. That's why news from here is rare. Nevertheless, we've already discussed that something might be brewing, because the Ukrainian armed forces are amassing forces, and Ukrainian sources, in turn, are saying that Russian forces are also building up their strength here. But these are all rumors and talk. However, yesterday something very important and concrete happened. Namely, the Russian forces conducted a landing operation, and a successful one at that. Very close to Kherson, just a couple of kilometers away to be precise. So what happened? Look here, you see this island, called Bolshoi Potemkin. And here, of course, is the city of Kherson. What's the front-line configuration here? The main Russian forces in this area are concentrated in Hola Pristan, Kardashinka, and Oleshki. Accordingly, the Ukrainian forces are mainly based in Kherson and Antonivka. The islands of Bilorudi, Toloka, and Habske are under Russian control. Bolshoi Potemkin and Krulik Islands are under Ukrainian control or are in a grey zone. Raids are constantly being made. This is normal from both sides. This is essentially how the front line has been operating for the past 2 years. But nothing particularly serious has happened here. However, as I mentioned, the Russian forces conducted a successful landing operation the day before, and a very important one at that. They managed to land from Bilorudi, a village on the island of the same name. Here, look, it runs along the northern and eastern parts of the island. So they managed to land on Bolshoi Potemkin Island from Bilorudi. And not just land and take control of a few positions, plant a flag, take some photos, and then retreat, as usually happens. This time, they managed to take control of the southern part of the island. And attention, this is very important. They managed to reach the dacha area. And here they are, look. Here, along the river, are the houses. So this dacha settlement has come under Russian control. Why is this important? Because, these are actual structures. Not just a bare beach or open terrain or even just a forest. These are buildings. Moreover, as you can see, they are now under Russian control on both sides. The main question is, what is this? Just an attempt to tactically improve positions, or a probe of the Ukrainian armed forces' defenses ahead of an upcoming operation that the Russian forces will conduct during the spring campaign? It's hard to say, but the fact that Bolshoi Potemkin Island is extremely important due to its proximity to Kherson is a fact, because this island could serve as a bridgehead for an offensive on Kherson. But you can see for yourself that the northern edge of the island is directly opposite the southwestern outskirts of Kherson. So taking Bolshoi Potemkin opens up new opportunities for the Russian Dnieper grouping. But for now, we need to understand that we're talking about taking control of the southern part of the island. We'll keep an eye on further developments. Kupiansk direction, as of January 4th, expansion of the offensive front. On the Kupiansk direction, there is an expansion of the offensive operations by the Russian armed forces on the western bank of the Oskol River. According to sources linked to the Ukrainian armed forces, Russian units crossed the river near the village of Topoli, located close to the border, and occupied one of the heights on the western bank. It is reported that this operation was conducted at least a week ago, but the information was not disseminated to avoid influencing the development of events. Now, after the publication of data by the Ukrainian side, this information has become available. The goal of this operation is likely an attempt to divert Ukrainian forces from the main defensive line in the Dnieper area. At the same time, the Russian armed forces are seeking to improve their tactical positions, which could be significant for further developments. If the Russian forces successfully advance, the Ukrainian command may have to redeploy reserves to this direction, which could weaken their positions on other parts of the front. Judging by the activity in the information space, this direction may soon become one of the key areas on this section of the front. The situation remains dynamic, and further developments will depend on the actions of both sides. Mirnograd-Toretsk direction, as of January 4th. Yelizavetivka. On the Mirnograd-Toretsk direction, the situation is developing as expected. After successful actions by the Russian armed forces in the Vodyane Druhe and Baranivka areas, where the clearing of Ukrainian units has been completed, the Russian command has intensified efforts to take control of the village of Yelizavetivka. The capture of Yelizavetivka is of strategic importance for ensuring the logistics of the advancing Russian group and creating conditions for further advancement toward Tarasivka. From the morning of January 4th, the assault on the village began, indicating an attempt by the Russian forces to consolidate their positions and develop the offensive on this section of the front. The situation remains tense, and further developments will depend on the success of both sides' actions. Kursk direction as of January 4th. Situation. On the Kursk direction, fighting continues along the Lochnia and Malaya-Lochnia rivers. In the Viktoriivka area, the front line remains relatively stable, but to the south, in the Sverdlikovo area, Russian units continue attempts to fully take control of the village. During the fighting, the Russian armed forces managed to occupy part of the forested areas west of Sverdlikovo, allowing them to attack the village from two directions. The fighting in this area is characterized by high intensity. Additionally, there have been reports of clashes in the Kurilivka area, located south of Sudzha. This indicates an expansion of the combat zone and attempts by the Russian armed forces to intensify the offensive on this section of the front. The situation remains dynamic, and further developments will depend on the success of both sides' actions. Well, that's all for now. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and all the best to you.